There is a couple of big stories to get into, starting with the biggest of them all, and that would be the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Xbox and Microsoft. The sale for Microsoft is obviously an important one, and it will also help Xbox tremendously when it comes to their future plans. Now, I spoke about this extensively in my previous video, so I'm not going to go over all of the details again, but Microsoft is setting themselves up for a consoleless future where they will transform from a platform to a service. When Phil Spencer says we will be the Netflix of gaming, there should be no confusion about that statement. They are trying to actually be Netflix but for games. Now, to achieve this goal, they will need games, and more importantly, they will need first-party games that will never leave and hurt their servers. This is where Activision Blizzard comes in. Owning all of those IPs will go a long way in securing content for Xbox Game Pass. Right now we know that the deal is underway, but the question is whether it will go through and when. Sony for their part has expressed their concern over the deal, but I do not believe too much will come from that and from their objection. If it does get rejected, it will be for a slew of other reasons. Right now there seems to be no real indication as to when we can expect this deal to close, but there are some who are predicting that it might still be this year. Coming to us from Peer Xbox, they say analyst predicts the Activision Blizzard deal could be finalized this year. Earlier today we highlighted Michael Patch's recent appearance on Yahoo Finance Live and his suggestion that Xbox Game Pass will reach 100 million subscribers, something that I already covered and a statement that I am in full agreement with, but the article goes on to say, and the Webpass security analyst also mentioned during the discussion that he believes that the Activision Blizzard acquisition could conclude by the year end. The main potential roadblock in his opinion lies with the FTC and whether they might try to challenge the deal by October. However, he believes that there is no legal basis to do so and therefore an agreement will be reached instead. What the FTC will likely do and should do is seek an agreement with Microsoft and enter into a consent decree, not block the merger, not sue to block the merger. And the consent decree will say we are not going to raise game prices or the cost of the console. And we are obviously going to continue to support PlayStation with Activision games. If they do that, this deal sails through. And again, I do completely agree with that. Microsoft already said that they will not make Call of Duty exclusive, but I do not know if they are willing to fully commit to that in writing. Xbox already said in their statement last week when it was leaked that Sony was trying to speak out against the deal by claiming that Call of Duty is too big to replicate and that Sony for their part has been paying for content not to be released on Xbox Game Pass. They were also not just paying for their own exclusivity but actually stipulating in some of their game contracts that if you do business with them then those games may not be released on Xbox Game Pass. Obviously both companies have been paying for third-party exclusive content for years now, but Sony writing their contracts with developers the way that they did definitely made many feel that it was not just about securing content for themselves exclusively but also actively trying to undercut Game Pass. Now I do not think that things are as black and white and I am sure that Microsoft does the same, but anyway that is the claim from Xbox towards Sony. Now to circle back to Xbox and them not wanting to commit fully in writing that Activision Blizzard games will not eventually be pulled from Sony comes down to leverage. As I said, Sony for years now have been going around and getting exclusive deals done and keeping them from Xbox. Final Fantasy VII Remake is the biggest one that comes to my mind because it is the game that I was the most disappointed in that I could not play as an Xbox owner. Now if Sony tries to pull anything like that and goes to big developers and offer to pay them for exclusive rights, Microsoft can just call them up and ask if they are sure about it. Pretty much just hold Call of Duty over their heads as leverage. You keep content from us, then we keep Call of Duty from you. It is the ultimate equalizer. Now I would prefer that they do not do that because it is a really really cheap tactic to have, and the Call of Duty game should obviously not be exclusive to Xbox. In fact, I don't think any of the Activision Blizzard games should be exclusive. But to continue with the article, Patches says that October is kind of when the FTC has to fish or cut bait, so if they don't take any action by the end of that month, he believes that Microsoft will announce that the deal is done by the end of 2022 or January 15th at the latest. Whenever this deal does close, it is already been confirmed that Microsoft want to bring as many Activision Blizzard games to Xbox Game Pass as possible, so it should include the likes of Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot, Diablo, and much more. Now, first of all, right now we do not know for sure when this deal will close, but most believe that it will only be done by March of 2023. Secondly, Xbox might not make any of these games exclusive, but all of the big IPs will definitely be on Xbox Game Pass the moment the deal closes, and going forward their IPs will most likely be day and date releases. Xbox is trying to build up its servers as quickly as possible so that they can protect itself from the inevitable cloud gaming takeover. Having a service with 100 or 200 million paying members will go a long way in enticing developers to use their platform when Xbox consoles eventually become blockbuster. Anyway, let's dig a little bit deeper into this acquisition and see exactly how all of this will work. The acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft might be halfway through, at least according to Phil Spencer, but it does not mean that there are no big hurdles to clear. One of those big obstacles is getting approval from more than 20 different bodies all over the world. Game Industry did a really good job breaking down everything that needs to happen in their article, Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, what is going on and what is happening next. Microsoft proposed $70 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard is currently being scrutinized by regulators around the world. The process is starting to make headlines after the Brazilian regulator made public its responses it has received from the game industry about the deal and its potential impact. The regulation process is complicated and involves various different bodies from different countries that must look at the deal before it can go ahead, and that is, as I've mentioned, because they will need to go through all of those bodies before the deal can be finalized. Now, I do not believe that they need approval from all of them, but it still needs to go through them. So when it comes to why does Microsoft need the approval to buy Activision Blizzard, this deal is, to use the professional business term, massive. It is potentially game-changing deal that could not just transform things for Microsoft and Xbox, but for the entire game industry. It has the potential to impact everyone from the smallest indie developer to the biggest names in the business, and of course consumers. Now, that part is obviously what has been the topic of discussion for many months now. Over the last few weeks, stories have been coming out that Sony is speaking out against the deal because they do believe that it can actually have a massive impact on their business and even sway people away from PlayStation over to Xbox. They say that Call of Duty being on Xbox exclusively could mean that people will choose to buy that console instead of theirs. Now, I don't think that Sony has figured out yet that Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard so that they can have enough content to move away from platforms and turn themselves into a service, but be that as it may, let's just continue. The regulator bodies exist to try and make sure that deals don't result in any antitrust issues where one company can become overly dominant or competition is harmed in such a way that it could lead to fewer choices, higher prices, and or less innovation. Considering the scale and the size of this deal, Microsoft would have to obtain antitrust approval before taking ownership of Activision Blizzard. Now, I do not think that this deal in any way would do that, at least not now, considering how big Sony still is. I do think going forward and the changes being made eventually by switching over to cloud-based gaming will have an impact. I mentioned it last week, but consoles are on the way out, and if Xbox can have a good enough service, I do think that it can actually impact the business of Sony, who is more traditionally focused, but that will be because of the innovation from Xbox more so than just any one studio or studios that they are buying. But moving on, when it comes to deals like this, it does typically get approved in phases. Now, what are these phases? The first phase is relatively a short period where the regulators will request information and send questionnaires to competitors. Most mergers and acquisitions are approved during this phase. Now, based on my understanding of Phil Spencer saying that they are halfway through, this part of the deal is already done. For anything more complex where there is a risk to competition, the regulator will request the second phase. This is where a more in-depth analysis of the merger effects of the market will be analyzed. This is typically a far more detailed research phase designed to make sure that the transaction doesn't restrict competition in the regulator's market. The FTC has now entered the second phase of this investigation. So as they have stated here, this is where everything seems to be at the moment. The biggest story over the last few weeks has obviously been the findings coming out from Brazil, who has a more open policy in terms of releasing their findings and sharing the process. A bunch of other potential competitors to Xbox like Epic, Google, Ubisoft and Sony were contacted and asked for their opinions. Now, the only one that spoke out against Xbox was Sony, and that is obviously understandable since they are not only a developer but also a platform, so they do stand to lose the most. Now, when it comes to rejection, they say here the regulators could approve the deal, reject the deal or approve the deal under certain conditions designed to preserve competition. The condition could be that Microsoft can complete the deal if Activision Blizzard games remain multi-platform, for instance. They could also stipulate that Activision Blizzard must remain as its own independent organization, although analysts believe that this is unlikely. All sorts of conditions could be placed on this deal to make an unacceptable acquisition acceptable. However, conditions can be hard to enforce and require teams to make sure that the business is being conducted fairly. So they say here that it is unlikely that Microsoft will be forced to keep the Activision Blizzard games multi-platform, but it is a possibility. Now, by this point, anyone who watches know how I personally feel about exclusivity. I do not think that games should be locked on a piece of plastic under your TV. I think that anyone who is a true fan of gaming feels the same way. Games deserves to be played by everyone no matter where you choose to play, and titles like Diablo and Call of Duty definitely should be available for everyone. With that said though, I do understand why exclusives exist. I want everybody to be able to play all games, but I'm also not going to cry myself to sleep over it. But with that said, the biggest takeaway from the last few weeks was obviously the claims made by Sony that Call of Duty was so big that there is no competition and never will be. Now, is Call of Duty likely to make Microsoft dominant in games? That is the key question. As revealed in recent documents as part of Brazil's research, PlayStation unsurprisingly think that it will. Call of Duty is a significant IP with a large fan base. It is not just the biggest game on Xbox but also the biggest game on PlayStation. Microsoft also unsurprisingly does not agree. It believes that Call of Duty is not particularly unique and actually faces strong competition as it stands. Now, as far as all of those claims go, I do personally not agree with Sony that Call of Duty cannot be competed with. First of all, I think that Sony is obviously less concerned about others not being able to compete and more concerned over the fact that if Call of Duty becomes exclusive to Xbox, they will lose potentially hundreds and millions of dollars per year, which is completely understandable and a legitimate fear to have. To say though that no one can compete with it is just not not true. They are already facing strong competition, and new competition can always rise. Even games like Minecraft and World of Warcraft have competition. Secondly, as I have said in my previous video about Sony and Xbox becoming blockbuster, Call of Duty won't be released through PlayStation within the next 5 years anyway, whether Microsoft buys them out or not, so PlayStation just better start planning for the future now. As gaming moves over to cloud and consoles become less relevant, many publishers will just opt to rather create their own launchers on the App Store and just release their games through the cloud instead of making use of Xbox and PlayStation. It is a big reason why Xbox is pushing so hard for Xbox Game Pass to take over. If they can get their service to 100 or 200 million subscribers, they can still entice many developers to still release their games through them, considering how many eyes there will be on Xbox's platform still, even if it is virtual. It is why Phil Spencer keeps saying the Netflix of gaming. When it comes to series and movies, theoretically many studios can release movies on the internet, just like many game studios can release their games through the cloud, but many studios do not create their own website and release movies and series on their own, and instead signs deal with Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus because it makes more sense to release it through a service since there are more eyes there. What Xbox want to do is create the service that is so big that even though Rockstar has the option to release GTA 6 on their own, they will still just choose to go with Xbox because their platform is so big. So with that, Sony better start preparing for that reality too. Now, one of the key parts to this debate is whether Microsoft will make Call of Duty unavailable on the Sony platform. Microsoft insists that it will continue to make Call of Duty games on all devices, but this is a promise that doesn't offer specifics. There are contrasting precedents that people are using to indicate what Microsoft may do. Minecraft, another major Microsoft gaming acquisition, continues to be supported equally across every platform. However, with Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda, the company has opted for a different approach. Some titles continue to be supported on PlayStation, particularly live service games like Elder Scrolls Online, whereas future new games such as the upcoming Starfield will not. And again, right now it is still very unclear what will happen with those big IPs, but I do believe that games like Diablo and World of Warcraft will still be playable everywhere. We might even see a console version of World of Warcraft one day, or more likely a cloud version of World of Warcraft that can be played with a controller. But going on here, it is all about game console space. One of the key parts of the conversation is not just the role Call of Duty might play in a game console market, but also in terms of streaming and subscriptions. The former is a distribution model where games can be streamed and played on almost any device, while the latter is a business model where gamers pay a monthly fee to access a selection of games. Microsoft is a major player in this space with Xbox Game Pass subscription model and Xbox Cloud Gaming Service. Microsoft's subscription offering is unique in that it features new AAA game releases on the day they come out, which is competitors including Sony say they cannot financially justify. Microsoft also has an advantage in terms of cloud streaming space as it owns Azure, one of the biggest cloud competing operations in the world. It must be noted that other competitors in this space including Google and Amazon have similar advantages to Microsoft when it comes to cloud technology and services. So again, all of that does bring us back to the differences here in terms of the business models between Xbox and Sony. Sony right now is still very much set on their traditional model of selling as many consoles as they can and then making the best first party games and selling them at $70 each. It has been extremely successful for them, and due to this they have been dominating the market. The success of the PlayStation 4 far outweighs that of the Xbox One, and many are still a fan of this traditional market. I do not think that Xbox Game Pass is a financially successful model by any stretch of the imagination, but the hope is that it will be in 5 to 10 years from now. The reality is that you either eat up the cost now and cut into your immediate profits or get left behind. Consoles will be replaced by streaming. Music has been replaced, DVDs has been replaced, and consoles will be replaced too. Whether you like it, whether you don't, it is going to happen. Whether Sony can financially justify it or not does not matter. I think the sooner they start planning for a digital future, the better. And when it comes to Sony saying that they cannot financially justify it, it does not mean that they will go bankrupt if they do. It just means that they will lose some of their profits. So instead of making $10 billion, they will now just be making 5. But it's still better than making nothing 10 years from now when every developer has decided to release games on the cloud instead of on your platform. But let's just go on here. So even if Call of Duty continues to release on other platforms as it does now, the game plus Activision Blizzard's other titles would certainly have a positive impact on Xbox subscription and streaming business. In other words, there are a lot of factors for regulators to consider. Ultimately, they do not care about Sony or any other competitor. It is purely about the impact on the consumer. And again, Call of Duty is not what's going to decide who wins, even if it will have an impact on their business going forward. It will be who can best adapt and make the transition from a platform to a service. But then there is also one point that I do want to end on, and that's something that the article also points out about anti-competitiveness. If Disney, for instance, can go out and buy Marvel and Star Wars, why can't Xbox buy Call of Duty? And here I think the answer is very simple, as pointed out by games industry as well. When people watches movies, you will not find anyone who only watches Star Wars or Marvel movies exclusively, so the impact is not as big. There are, however, many people who only play one game. They might only play League of Legends or World of Warcraft or FIFA. Those people do exist, and therefore buying Call of Duty will have a much larger impact on Xbox than Lucasfilm have on Disney. With that said though, it is time to move on. Now, I have been talking a lot about cloud gaming and the impact of what a feature like this will mean for gaming going forward, but let's also talk about things that will be making its way to the servers, like the keyboard and mouse support. This article comes to us from DealShockers, and they say Xbox Cloud Gaming will apparently start supporting keyboard and mouse soon. Xbox Cloud Gaming is currently available across a wide variety of platforms, allowing gamers to enjoy their favorite titles without forcing them to have a gaming PC or console. But the fact that it only works with a controller on a PC might be a little bit annoying for those who don't either own a controller or don't like playing with a controller. Hopefully it seems that that will no longer be an issue for PC users of cloud gaming, as Microsoft is trying to add keyboard and mouse support for select number of games on the service. As spotted by a user and shared on Twitter, Microsoft has added a new mouse icon to the cloud gaming tab of the Xbox app on PC. It is a new icon that is actually a filter that showcases the game that can be played by keyboard and mouse while using the Xbox Cloud Gaming. Now, I'm not exactly sure how all of this will work, but keyboard and mouse is a feature that has long since been asked for by Xbox users, and something that Microsoft has stated that they are working on. Now, since Xbox games are now on PC as well, it should not be too hard adding that support. In fact, pretty much every game is on PC, so since that support for keyboard and mouse is already there, activating that option might become available soon. Now, keyboard and mouse support for Xbox consoles is one long-running project at Microsoft that was supposed to be available in the last generation of consoles for Xbox One, but even with the arrival of the Xbox Series X and S, the keyboard and mouse support has not been fully launched for the console. It is yet to be known whether it is a complex hardware issue or not, but maybe Microsoft is seeking to add the keyboard and mouse support to all platforms, including cloud gaming for now. That said, the new mouse filter is only available for the PC version of cloud for now, but we will probably hear more about this in the near future officially. Now, I am sure that cloud gaming is probably the main driving force behind this decision. Now, I will also say this, though I have always preferred a keyboard and mouse, but I do not think that the cloud gaming market will be the target audience here, as I think that most of them will probably be playing on mobile or for TVs. Those who want keyboard and mouse support will simply be playing on PC, and maybe there will be a small select group of players who want the feature for consoles as well, but hopefully it is something that we will see in the near future for everyone. As we also know, cloud gaming and Xbox Game Pass goes hand in hand, and there are some big things happening with the servers. Xbox Game Pass is growing all the time, with new titles being added almost every day. With that said, a very big title will be making its way to the PC version of the server soon. Kotaku said in their article Sony's Death Stranding is coming to Microsoft PC Game Pass next week. In a peculiar state of affairs, PlayStation console exclusive Death Stranding is coming to Microsoft PC Game Pass. Subscribers to the latter service will soon be able to fall over a hill for no additional cost. The news was announced by Microsoft via a neat tweet showing a Sam Porter Bridges alike carrying a metal case across an airfield, sporting a sticker boasting Death Stranding PC Game Pass August 23rd, 2022. Now, obviously this is a big title for many people, and the fact that it will now be on the PC version of Game Pass means that even more people will have access to it in order to play it. Earlier this year, Xbox announced a partnership with Kojima, so seeing that partnership extend even more is great. 2019 Sony published Wobbly Man Simulator has been available on PC for a couple of years, ported across 8 months after the original release. That was via Italian publisher 505 Games and its company that has made the deal with Kojima Productions to see the game arrive on PC Game Pass. Despite 505 also releasing a PC version of the director's cut of Death Stranding this year, the game coming to Microsoft subscription service is described in a press release as the original version of Hideo Kojima's critically acclaimed and genre-defying epic. It should be noted though that Death Stranding will only be for the PC, and there is no plans right now to bring the game over to Xbox consoles. In fact, I do not think that we will ever see it on Xbox. Now honestly, this game has never been that appealing to me, but if it is on Game Pass, I will definitely go and give it a try, and I guess that is also the power of Game Pass, trying out games that you never thought that you would. Now Kotaku also goes on in their article to say, of course it's not coming to Xbox Game Pass. That will be a fracture of reality too far, as the game has not and likely will never be released on Xbox consoles. It is however available on Sony's recently relaunched PlayStation Plus, where you can get both the original version and last year's director's cut as part of the membership. All this happens on August 23rd, and it is also worth noting that you can subscribe to PC Game Pass for $1 for the first month. So you know, Death Stranding for $1 is a good deal. Just don't forget to set a reminder on your phone for the month's time to cancel the sub before it rolls over to full price. And again, as they pointed out, Sony still has this game on lock when it comes to console, but at least they are not paying Kojima this time to keep it off PC Game Pass, although I'm sure that they tried. Then lastly, let's talk about NFTs and Sony. The topic of NFTs in gaming has been a controversial one for quite some time now, with the overwhelming majority of gamers agreeing that it has no business in the space. We have seen many developers indicating their intent to add NFTs, including some really big ones like Ubisoft, Sega, and of course EA. Although some studios within Xbox like Mojang has come out pretty aggressively against the idea, there are also others who are far more open to it, and one of those seemed to be Sony. In this article from GameRant, they say controversial PlayStation survey asks gamers about NFTs. NFTs and the implementation of blockchain technology in video games continue to be an incredibly controversial topic in the game industry. Executives see NFTs as an opportunity for increased monetization with little overhead, while many gamers see little benefit to gameplay tainted by exploitive monetization and environmental concerns. PlayStation has largely remained silent on the topic despite patterns implying future NFT efforts. Now PlayStation has issued a survey on NFTs that's already creating backlash online. Now at this time it is still unclear what Sony wants to do with the NFT space, but it does sound like there might be some type of interest from them. A while ago they came under fire for online collectibles that they were offering, although in that case Sony made it clear that those collectibles were not linked to any blockchain. With that said, Twitter user Snorlax Owen shared a screenshot taken from the PlayStation Quest that they received, tasking them to respond to a survey question. The question that they received was, which of the following NFT digital collectibles would you be most interested in purchasing? Responses included NFTs related to players' favorite game characters, esport players or teams' favorite music artists, and even Evo branded NFTs. The broader headline for the question was listed as what do you collect most? Now the fact that Sony is pushing out the survey through Evo, which they own, is a clear indication that they are trying to explore the possibility of entering into the space, and I do think that this is a terrible idea. I have yet to see a proper successful NFT venture, and I'm not talking about a pump and dump where some people make money, but an actual proper project that makes use of all the wonderful technology and benefit that they always brag about. The implication of the survey question is that PlayStation is evaluating what kind of NFTs PlayStation fans would most be interested in collecting if the platform began offering them for sale. It is ultimately just a survey question, but it is the first official confirmation that PlayStation is considering selling NFTs as a project. It doesn't mean that PlayStation will follow through, as companies survey consumers on products that never comes to the market all the time. Still, for PlayStation fans against NFTs, it is a concerning revelation, and I think that is fair to point out, as there is nothing right now from Sony to suggest that they are entering into the space, but it would not surprise me one bit if they do. We are seeing revenue losses all over the gaming space, and there is no doubt that large publishers are looking to cash in even more and will consider doing that by any means necessary. There are some questions about whether the survey was issued in error. However, PlayStation recently announced that it is calling PlayStation Stars a loyalty program that can reward digital collectibles. These PlayStation digital collectibles were described as digital representations of figurines and other art forms from games and other media. PlayStation also explicitly states that these rewards are not NFTs, although fans question if PlayStation Stars was the system designed to accumulate users to the idea of NFTs at the very least. Now, I do not think that Sony did this whole PlayStation Star thing to make fans used to the idea of NFTs, but I definitely do not believe that it was an error made by asking people about NFTs. Some believe that the survey question accidentally mentioned NFTs when it intended to say solely digital collectibles as a reference to PlayStation Stars. Others say that the survey betrayed the nature of these digital collectibles as NFTs in the making. Now, there are no way to be sure, but these kinds of survey questions are typically very carefully worded, otherwise they are not particularly productive. Again, I do not think that you can actually say NFTs instead of collectibles. Hopefully they don't enter the space, but the sad reality is that where there is money to be made, no matter how shitty the method, large corporations will always be there.